This is how I do the Maggiknits tube. Okay, so you're in a row that you're going to do the tube. So you have your yarn that you're working across the needle to where it'll tell you are your stitches for the tube. It'll tell you how many stitches there are. So here we're doing a tube over 10 stitches, and it'll tell you what your tube yarn is on the pattern, tube TUBE, and it will probably say to do 7 rows. So you will start and you will do knit row, turn to the wrong side, purl row, knit row, purl row, knit row, purl row, back and forward till you have your stitches like that. And you will do, for a normal tube, 7 rows. So your last row is on the right side. Okay? So it's a knit row you've finished with. Then, on the wrong side, and you're not using your yarn, I forgot to say too, if you do your first row looser, it's easier to pick up. So if you follow your instructions exactly, it'll tell you to pick the stitch up from your left hand needle, and you dive down to that very first row and that same loop, and you pick that loop onto the needle, and then you pass the slip stitch over from the back, and it's looser there. Okay, so then you will go next stitch, so slip that next stitch to your right hand needle, dive down again every stitch, every loop, and then pass it over from the back. So you're going to do that the whole way across the row, every stitch, every loop, every stitch, every loop. Okay, every stitch, every loop, because if you go into the wrong loop or you go into the loop twice, it'll make it tighter. So every stitch, every loop, pass over from the back. Okay, you can see this. We're under COVID days and I can't get anybody to hold a camera, so I have to do it myself. Now your very last loop, you will have 2 stitches left, so you dive down, pass the slip stitch over, and you will always have 1 stitch left on your needle. So you just pass that stitch over, and then if you turn your knitting to the right, you have a tube. Okay, so your main yarn you didn't cut, so you just literally use your main yarn, and then you just knit over the tube stitches onto whatever your instructions are for the rest of the row. You will find that you're cutting your tube yarn on either side. So you've got, as you see, a tail of yarn here. Some of you might find you've a wee bit of a hole at either end. Well, you have the yarn there just to neaten and tidy that up. And that's really all there is to it. So then knit over it, as I said, with the main yarn. Now, if you were then doing, say, a tube in the same colour, and it's hard to see the loop, this is a frilled tube from one of the designs. So your first row of the tube you would do with 2 strands, for this one maybe with black thread and the natural linen. And the rest of your rows you would do with just the yarn. And when you join your tube up, then you will pull those 2 strands of thread out, because the thread will help show you where the loops are if it's the same colour yarn that you're using. If you were doing, say, a flap like this, which is more than 7 rows from the usual tube, so it's called a bit of a flap, and you would maybe do 11 rows, so it's exactly the same thing and joined exactly the same way, but you just have more rows in it. So I'm hoping that helps you do your Maggiknit tube. Thank you.